Шановні колеги,
Dear colleagues, greetings. Today we are opening a discussion, and I'd like to say that we would like to talk to our guests and also to our audience online and offline about the opening of the summer school resilience league, which is called resilience awareness for the future, which awareness for the future, which will help resilience as a foundation for managing future crises. And it will, why actually we gather it all together here. Uh, the Resilience League is the international platform which is functioning, in fact, since 2016 and organizes summer schools in various countries. And we had schools in Estonia, in Ukraine, and in other countries. But nevertheless, the war is ongoing. And we live under conditions, under very difficult conditions, and we suggested our guests to discuss this topic today. The problem is that, in fact, we are observing the all well-known processes to be destroyed, which were based on on centralization and control management. And in fact, this kind of resilience concept, which is the foundation of our school, it answers how in this kind of situation, decentralization, when all the previous perception of management is destroyed, we can be managing society. In fact, the project and the school is implemented together with the NGO Sustainable Ukraine, a School of Media Patriots, together with Crimea Daily Initiative, with the support of the of the Crimean Platform Embassy of Estonia to Ukraine, and also the Council of the Cognitive Deoccupation of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea. With this, I'd like to introduce our experts who are going to participate these trainings during this week. Yevhen Bondarenko, Head of the Information Support Department of the Representation of the President of Ukraine in the Autonomous Republic of Crimea. Dmytro Teprik, General Director of the NGO Sustainable Ukraine International Expert on Security and Public Resilience. Matvey Reitman, Member of the Estonian Parliament, Special Rapporteur of the Parliamentary Support Group for Ukraine of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, Member of the UN Committee on Disaster Assessment and Coordination, Mentor of the Stable Ukraine Program. Vadim Ivanov, Head of the Anti-Crisis Management System of the Social Insurance Department of the Ministry of Social Affairs of the Republic of Estonia, Mentor of the Stable Ukraine Project. Yevgenia Yanchuk, Head of the NGO School of Media Patriots. Greetings. Dear colleagues, I'd like to ask you to speak, not to rush because we have interpreter, and with this I'd like to pass the floor to Yevhen Bondarenko for him to introduce the framework of this meeting and the criteria of eligibility for the summer school, for the spring school. Thank you. In fact, it's very symbolic to be talking about Resilience League nowadays, and at the same time being working in the representation of the president of Ukraine in the Autonomous Republic of Crimea, and I was the member of the Resilience League in Estonia, and what we probably, if Dmytro allows me, with the thing which we are recovering the regular events of the League of Resilience and recovering them in Ukraine because spring and autumn summers they were in Baltic countries in Estonia, and that was the development of the cooperation and the development of cooperation on the countering of the Russian cyber attacks. And Resilience League started in 2016. At that moment, Crimea was occupied for 2 years, and the Hyprid attacks of the Russian Federation were not stopping. And sooner we saw that they are occupying the territories, and for 3 years we call them newly occupied territories. But nevertheless, now when we are watching these territories, we can say that the Russian Federation is using the identical practices on repressions, which are repressions, destroying identities of the people, and also rewriting reality, which they used in the Autonomous Republic of Crimea and which they continue using during these 11 years. And despite the fact that for 11 years, every day we hear and we know about resilience, about the fact that the Russian Federation is not able to manage this generation. The Russian Federation started to colonize the peninsula when they understood that they are not able to occupy the identity of these people. They could not even they were not even able to manage the young people. At that time, they were 8, 9 years old. And now they're 18, 19, 20 years old. And now the Russian Federation is opening cases and they are kind of discrediting the Russian army. They are sending them to prisons, in detention centers. So they are enhancing repressions against those who spent 11 years under occupation. And that is extremely valuable because the question on how we are going to implement strategic communications, how we are going to return our co-citizens to Ukrainian context, because we have to understand that when the territories are deoccupied, the territories of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea, we cannot we do not know when it will happen because only the state intelligence and state security services know about that. But we have to be ready for various scenarios. And therefore, in 2022, when we were talking to Dmitro, we were trying, because we tried to engage the very different experts who understand it and who work for many years on this issue. And therefore, I was mentioning the background, the strong background, and we engaged Dmitro to think on how can we develop the first steps and the representation of the president is doing that. We have some certain vision on how we will recover Ukraine regime in the Autonomous Republic of Crimea, and therefore we formed the half-structured interviews, and in this way we got the strategy of the cognitive deoccupation of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea. After we introduced it, it was important for us to understand whether this document is interesting, whether people are ready to work with it, and we got the results we were never expecting. We got a huge demand on continuation of this work, on the development of some certain steps, and in 2023 we started this work. And now in the representation we have the Council on the Cognitive Deoccupation, and they have, depending on the topic, they have a monthly or a quarterly meeting. We are developing the framework of the messages and narratives on some specific dates. In 2024, we organized the research, which was called cognitive occupation, and we were measuring the cognitive level of the awareness about Crimea and their perception of the cognitive occupation in the Autonomous Republic of Crimea. Only 8.2% think that their awareness level is enough. 9% evaluate the level of the information in media to be sufficient. And therefore, we have to develop our own high quality communication. And it's not only about text or videos, it's always about systematic work in various areas. And therefore, when we're talking about cognitive occupation policy, we are talking about cross-sectoral approach. And therefore, we have the state authorities, NGOs, international experts, and also we are developing in this way different visions. And now we are focused as the Council on the implementation of the first stage, and that is the culture, memory culture on about Crimea on the territory which is controlled by Ukraine, because we have other challenges which are represented by the youth very good, because modern Ukrainian youth know about Crimea only on the level they heard from in school, or what they heard about the Crimean Bridge, and there is no imprinting. They are not connected to this territory because for 11 years we do not have any kind of connection. Because any kind of imprinting, psychological term, is it comes from your own experience, and therefore we organized. Youth workshops to ask the modern youth what do they know about Crimea and how do they suggest communicate the Crimea topic among their generation. And on one of these kind of meetings, when we worked with the expert corps, we understood that we have to think on how we can organize the crisis communications in case various some scenarios might occur, and what kind of narratives might be the first signs, because when we're talking about communication, and especially when we're talking about communication with the temporary occupied territories, we have to understand that this kind of communication has to be conscious, it has to be designed, it has to be measured, it has to have a feedback. But nevertheless, when we are talking about the temporary occupied territory, there are some challenges because we are not able to measure at the moment, for example, the attitude of the local population to different topics, because there is no autonomous survey which will give you representative data, because we do understand that the latest cases, the Russian Federation is organizing repressions for like on Facebook. We have to understand that, but nevertheless, we have to get this kind of feedback, and we are obtaining it, and we have to be thinking what kind of forms of communication we have to develop on the territory which is controlled by Ukraine in order for it to be heard on the temporary occupied Crimea, because the recent research has shown that the most efficient level of communication within temporary occupied territories is interaction through co-citizens who live on the territory which is controlled by Ukraine and who are in touch with those who are on the temporary occupied territories. And these people, they watch media, they look what is happening in Kyiv, in Dnipro, in Odessa, and how this topic is represented in Crimea. If we are talking about the other temporary occupied territories, it is about Mariupol, Luhanska, Donetska Oblast. And when they call their friends or relatives, they are asking, and what are they saying about Crimea? And what does Ukraine do? And what this or the other sector of the government does, and what they hear as a feedback is our source of communication, and therefore we have to think how we can organize communication here in order to prepare the interaction with the citizens who are under temporary occupation. And the first challenges we are facing, if Dmitro will allow me, I will add a bit. In 2024, we organized a proactive simulation modeling of the possible scenarios on what can happen on the temporary occupied Crimea, what kind of connections might be in place. And we found lots of interesting insights. Lots of topics we do not pay attention to in our daily life, and therefore our spring school, and when we are organizing all of these events, it is very important, and therefore the Council on the Occupation, we joined her to support it, because in the circle of the people who have the expertise, who are now are the part of it, or who will be the ones who will be the part of this network of connection on the temporary occupied territories, so that, by the way, that is the state authorities, and that can be the state emergency situation and the others, so that we could understand how can we enhance each other, how can we improve cross-sectoral cooperation, and how can we form the most important things which we have in League of Sustainability is how we can form resilience league, and how it can how can we see it on the temporary occupied territories? And if if we are talking about the basic framework, we have to be working on that is it, and therefore it is symbolic that the school, I would say, gets new framework, and therefore we start to be talking about the future. Thank you. Yevhen, thank you very much. Maybe our colleagues have the questions? At the moment, and if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you the question. So, do I understand you correctly that what you've just mentioned is to one of the elements of the unified system of preparation for the occupation of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea? And the second question: are our state authorities ready to work with cognitive challenges you've just mentioned? I mean, lack of belief, high expectations, high fake narratives, and the others. Are our state teams ready to counter it? Do they have enough of tools to work with it? So, for example, the Council on the Cognitive Occupation, the purpose of its work is to work to cooperate, to improve cooperation, and to develop the tools and skills which can help us to implement this work. Because when we were talking with Metro about the vision, we were talking about a portfolio of practices which can be applied depending on the scenario we are using. Because crisis management is the set of tools you can use now and not something else, because when you're in crisis it's hard to make some forecast, because the forecasted crisis, the predicted crisis, is something that is very useful. And when we're talking about different forms, we were studying different state institutions, and that is something that we continue working on, because when we have meetings we are always asking what is happening after the meetings and how materials or knowledge is used. And we can see the first results. For example, if we are talking about 18th of March, Crimean genocide victims, and the experts have developed the material that is the communication framework. And for example, we developed a lesson for three levels of the school education. And we know that it was recommended by the Ministry of Education for it to be used at schools and these materials were implemented. So that is a good cross-sectoral synergy. And something was created by Council, and it is communicated on the level of the state institutions. And of course, we have to be working with the people who have, and it doesn't actually depend on the point whether this person works for is a state official. Nevertheless, you have to have some basic knowledge and the understanding of all of these challenges. And we are trying to develop these bases for everyone who studies this to be able to work with it. For example, at the moment, we started to work with the universities, and in this way, we are preparing the specialists for the future. Before this meeting, we had the meeting in the Kyiv National Khreshchatyk University, and there, on the basis of there, they have the MA degrees on post-conflict degrees. And we understand that a MA degree is 1.5, 2 years. And of course, not everyone will be ready to start working on the temporary occupied territories. I mean, that is the systematic preparation of the specialists, and we have to start it one day. The last week we were in Kharkiv when the similar programs were launched in Kharkiv National University, and we have negotiations with the other universities. Maybe in the beginning we will have some kind of course, and after that, that will be some programs, and they are going to prepare the specialists who have specific expertise and understanding. We also have good cooperation with the national agency. We also have the program of the personnel. Human resource programs, and now this is going to be enhanced, but nevertheless, everyone who filled in the form, they have shown us that they are interested in this, but at the same time, they will get the opportunity to study some additional materials. And if, for example, we will have the critical situation, in this case, we will have the resource of people, human resource, people who will be ready to start working. And for the firefighters, they have reserves, and in case there is any kind of situation, they can engage the reserves. But when we're talking about the cognitive occupation, we are talking also about the transformation of the perception of these territories. We're talking about the people who are ready to work with difficult topics, with trigger topics, with different perception of the people who lived on these territories, because people, they keep their identity, but the influence of occupation still remains. And the specialists who start working there, they have to understand this kind of impact of occupation to be able to do the reintegration as fast as possible, to mitigate the risks, and as soon as possible reintegrate these people and return them to all Ukrainian context. Thank you, Yvonne. So in other words, we can say that on this example of the Council of the Cognitive Occupation of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea, you said that you are supporting cross-sectoral, cross-disciplinary approach, and you engage various experts, academic circles, scientific circles, journalists, to identify the tools on resolving the tasks you have as a council. Thank you. And with this, I'd like to invite Dmytro Tepruk, that is the Director General of Sustainable Ukraine, who contributed a lot to the development of the infrastructure of sustainability in Ukraine and also in Estonia and in many other countries. Organized lots of researches, trainings, and actively cooperates with the state authorities, and therefore we would like to hear your opinion on the concept of the spring school. Why do we need it? Why do we need it now? And what kind of tasks can it fulfill, in your opinion? Thank you, Andrei. Dear friends.
I'll use English here, and first of all, of course, I would like to thank my country, Estonia, for continuous supporting Ukraine in its efforts to become a more resilient, more secured and safer country, a European country, I would say, because it's our joint common future we would like to build together. And particularly this event is supported by the Estonian embassy in Kyiv. So therefore, of course, we thank them for that. But let me say just a few points about the event. As Evgen already mentioned, it's not just one event. We continue cooperation within this Baltic Ukrainian framework. And of course, Crimea and Crimean issues are very complex and complicated. So we can use them to elaborate more on the future of resilience. And let me briefly say why it is important to have this co-framing. By co-framing, I mean actually creating a new tool for collective resilience. So why to co-frame future literacy, resilience, and crisis management? So this is, I think, the focal question of our event. Why and how to co-frame future literacy, resilience, and crisis management? And this is because none of these can be developed in silos. We do understand that literacy, resilience, and crisis management, they are not end results, they are processes, and they cannot be developed in silos. Well, future literacy helps people understand change, while resilience helps people withstand it, and crisis management helps them navigate it. So basically, we combine and conframe three processes to understand, withstand, and navigate change. Moreover, co-framing, future literacy, resilience, and crisis management encourages actually cooperation and collaboration, interdisciplinary and cross-sectoral cooperation and collaboration, which means that it encourages shared language, shared vision, and shared responsibility. And I would like to stress here, of course, shared responsibility, because this is something which is required here, not just in Ukraine, but in Europe. Because especially during the turbulent times like the war, or let's say technological disruptions, as we have seen many of them, or in the case of Crimea, the occupation of territories and people's minds, because cognitive deoccupation of Crimea deals, of course, with minds and hearts. So therefore, again, shared language, shared vision, and shared responsibility are very important. Second point is about the futures. And as you know, in English, we can use the word futures in plural. So we are talking about multiple futures. And why it is important, why engaging matters. There's a saying which goes like that: time expands when we are thinking about the futures. And it's not just poetic, actually it's very practical. When we envision multiple futures with different scenarios, we give ourselves actually more space and more time to prepare, adapt, and innovate. So basically what I'm saying, when we're talking about different scenarios of the future, therefore we create more space for ourselves to prepare and adapt. It is actually very important to understand that future does not passively arrive. The future is shaped by those who engage with it actively. So planners, leaders, decision makers, politicians, communities, experts, all of those who engage actively with the future thinking, they shape it. Because we know from the past that, passive waiting creates vulnerability, but active foresight builds agency, and that we need for resilient to be agent of resilience, to build agency. Now we do understand that we cannot predict the future, certainly 100%, and we don't have to be afraid of it, because uncertainty is not the enemy, but distrust is. Which means that, of course, psychologically, most of the people are very uncomfortable with the ambiguity, with the uncertainty, but avoiding it, it would be a mistake. It's not a resilient thinking to avoid uncertainty and ambiguity. So therefore, for us, the challenge is how we communicate uncertainty without eroding social political trust. And this one requires, I would say, honest, transparent framing, saying that actually we don't know all the answers, but here it is how we thinking, acting, and adapting. And this is the place where strategic communications comes in, to how to plan and execute qualitative strategic communication as an important one to communicate uncertainties without actually eroding social political trust, as I said. So managing expectations is less about offering credibility or certainty, but more actually about building credibility and psychological readiness. So our challenge here, and of course during the spring school next days, will be to ask all the experts who will be participating to rethink resilience, because it's actually more than bouncing back. Well, traditional concept of resilience is being noted that it's, bouncing back, but I would say that next step is actually evolving towards adaptive preparedness, being ready not just for known risk, but also for the unknowable. And this would include anticipatory, transparent, and inclusive governance, flexible systems, and of course, investments in mental agility. So shifting from reaction to preemptive positioning. And last but not least, my final point here would be about the challenges for Ukraine on its European path. Because now Ukraine's integration to the European Union is started, and we know that it will be challenged or even sabotaged by different adversaries. And I think here kind of cognitive superiority comes in, because it is a strategic frontier, not just for Ukraine, but also for European nations and also for Estonia. So how to support Ukraine's European integration? Because it requires or demands actually more than just bureaucratic alignment, I would say. It requires a strategic leap in thinking, decision-making, and societal adaptability. So in this context, I would say that cognitive superiority would become a national asset to be developed here in Ukraine with the help of international community, being able to outthink and outdecide adversaries in complex and high-stake environments. And this is what we are trying to create, a resilient mindset and forward-looking and future-oriented approach. And this is how it links directly back to future literacy, resilience, crisis preparedness, and uncertainty management. So I would say my final phrase would be that those who can learn faster and think deeper win more than just war. They shape strong peace. Thank you. Дякую.
Дякую, Дмитре.
Thank you. Sustainability is mindset. Continuing what you've said, that it's either we who are managing crisis, or otherwise there are crises which are going will manage us. I would like to return to the issue you've mentioned about the changes which can occur in this process. All of us know that back in 2020, we had the process which was called resilience turn. That is the change, the shift. And before that, resilience was more kind of considered to be the topic related to ecological climate changes. And after 2014, 2020, that is more related to security and political processes management. And since that time, we had an idea that sustainability is not a state of the society, but a process. And therefore, I'd like to ask you to share your thoughts on whether there is contradiction between two conceptual aspects of the sustainability concepts, adaptivity and transformation of the system, or when the system is changing or even becoming better than it used to be before the beginning of crisis. So in your opinion, whether these two terms, they are contradicting each other or they are comprehensive for each other?
Really complement each other. Because without a transformation, a society or a community cannot become a resilient one. Of course, every agent of resilient would go through the phase of adaptation, but adaptation is not the final result. I would say that transformation is actually more valuable. So becoming a better version of you in the future. But for that, actually, again, linking back to future literacy, you have to imagine what a better version of you should exist in the future. What kind of desirable future you would like to achieve? What is your goal? I mean, what you would like to be transformed into. and to become. I mean, for the future of Ukraine, again, just an example, what kind of Ukraine we would like to have altogether within the European Union after its accession, let's say in 10 or 15 years. What kind of Ukraine we as Europeans would like to have? What kind of Crimea, in that sense, we would like to have as a part of Ukraine after the occupation? So for the transformation, you have to envision, you have to have, you know, that kind of imagination or kind of vision, knowing how you would like to go there. You know, the version of desirable future. And that is very much linked to resilience. Because just being adaptive doesn't mean that you become better. You might become actually, you know, weaker, or you might become averser. I mean, being just adaptive. But transformation, I think, is the key issue here.
Дякую, Дмитре.
Thank you, Dmitro. And with this, I'd like to talk with Mati Raidma, with a great friend of Ukraine and also the member of the parliament of the Estonian parliament. But there is another thing which is similar in our biography. We organized assimilation trainings in Ukraine after the beginning of the full-scale war in 2022. Mati, together with Vadim and with the Estonian team, which is with us today, they are co-authors of the concept of the assimilation trainings. And right now, Dmitro has reminded me about the terms like vision of the future, future literacy, and I remember that during these trainings, Mati was mentioning soft skills, creativity, non-standard approach to work in crisis headquarters, and also the approach to resolving comprehensive systematic problems. And that is something I'd like to ask you, Mati. How these concepts can be compared, how they are related to the spring school, but nevertheless, before this, I'd like to ask you, Mati, on the your opinion on the conceptual vision of the topic. So if you look at the what we are doing, we are talking about future management, and therefore I'd like to ask you, Matti, whether it is possible to manage something in chaos, especially when we're talking about the future.
Thank you very much. First, I would like to thank organizers to invite me back to Ukraine. I'm really proud to have this opportunity to put my knowledge and experience to these processes, and I'm really looking forward for victorious future of Ukraine. Your question was about house. It means house is one of the characteristics of the crisis. I mean, there is nothing extraordinary. And basic idea about crisis management, how to organize a house a bit and then go forward with solutions. There is one key word, and it's simple. I'm not going deep to theoretical stuff and difficult words to understand, but it is simply that real crisis, there are long list of uncertainties. You can't plan it, you can't prepare it, And this is first. It means typically we all organizations and services have long plans how to react, how to deal, but usually situation gives absolutely new surprises, and you're weak if you're trying to follow papers. And second thing that usually there is a lot of vertical things. It means all different ministries doing their job. But in real situations, base is that we are together, we are a team, we are solving those challenges what we have today. Sounds really simple, but in reality extremely difficult. And then this is way what we tried to discuss and use in our trainings in different regions. And I think it was a success story. At the end of those trainings and exercises, everyone started to understand the importance, how important we are as persons to integrate into one team and to solve things. And also now in this spring session when we're talking maybe officially cognitive deoccupation, crime, a lot of difficult things, but simply saying what we really will do and can we do it together, because organizations are different, cultures are different, uniform people working vertically, really strong. Other services more horizontally. How it put together. There can't be a strong leadership. This has to be network-based. And those challenges we will discuss next days, and trying to find the common language, common ground for people from different organizations who really want to be a part of this process when the time will come where Ukraine has to take back all occupied areas and Crimea, and in really comprehensive way to take also those societies back, to build up it back. In crisis management, we have universal theories about after crisis plans and how to do so on. And then this is also a topic for next days to discuss with Ukrainian experts to find the Ukrainian way how to do it.
Дякую, Маті.
Thank you, Mati. In fact, it's not a very typical idea. And I would say that it's not that well perceived, easy perceived, because in crisis situations, it's sometimes it's better to be creative, and it's better to rely on creativity instead of some plans and some protocols. And I know that you, Matti, you worked a lot on countering the extraordinary situation of situations all around the world in different organizations, and also Meta was a head of the State Emergency Situation Service in Estonia. Mr. Mr. Reitmeier, what is the ratio of the resolving of crisis situations between, for example, on the one hand we have some protocols, some samples, and on the other hand we have creative solutions right during crisis? So what should be the ratio of creativity and protocols? So what kind of ratio is something that you observed more in your practice?
If you want to have successful results, and successful not for you, but for society, then this is summary. You can't prefer one from another, let's say 50-50, but anyway, in real world, creativity has a first place. And all protocols, plans, and all paperwork, this is supportive material. It is also important to be prepared for situations where you don't have answers, but you have methodology and you have people who thinking in the same way like you. And this is a secret of the success.
Дякую.
Thank you, Mate. And the last question for you, Mate. In 2024, the Minister of Extraordinary Situations of Switzerland has asked 10 questions of resilience for the Swiss society. And he has started to ask whether we are ready. The state authorities of Switzerland, civic society, volunteers, and one of the key questions was whether you already have any kind of agreements on cooperation with the partners in the context of the preparation for the possible war or the serious security changes which might occur in Switzerland. And in fact, I was kind of surprised because Switzerland has no war at the moment, but nevertheless they are getting ready. They are preparing. They are already planning shelters. They are already planning how they will act during crisis situations. And the most important thing is that they are building the partnership network in advance. Could you tell us, please? Do you observe these kind of tendencies in the European countries, maybe in Estonia? Maybe you already have this kind of preparation, or maybe something else is ongoing in Estonia or the European countries.
Yeah, unfortunately, Estonia is a bit closer to Russia than Switzerland. And of course, same discussions also in Estonia. And maybe some remarks, it means there is a stereotype that the state has to do everything. And usually citizens asking from state, are you ready? What you're doing? But this Switzerland example shows exactly the right theory. It means state can ask also from the citizens, are you ready? And in this debate, our discussion, we are also in Estonia. And then this is a really comprehensive approach. We're discussing, we're trying now, for example, in Estonia, promote also, if we're talking plans, what is basically state business, but we're asking, do you have a family crisis plan? And we have some nice examples, and our Estonian rescue service trying to promote this idea really for families to start think about crisis situations from natural up to the war situation. Do you have a plan? How you will survive, what you will do? And if all society will be also involved in this preparedness process, then theory and also practice shows, like again Switzerland example, that confidence will raise. All crisis related things should be based not in fear but in self-confidence. And also what we're trying to do in Estonia to build all this preparedness work on self-confidence. Because normal life has to continue, business has to continue, also in this situation where we have neighbor and you know what this neighbor can do, and we are also really realistic people. But in the same time, you can't can't let fear take over their life. You have to be self-confident, and you have to have clear mind, work together in state level, in local level, and also in family level, and how all those levels to unite and to have a mutual understanding that the only key word which we have is together, not separately, not different ministries separately, but all together, all levels of society. And then this is a goal. And of course, we are on the way, but in Estonia, we're trying to follow this idea. Thanks.
Дякую, Маті.
Thank you, Matti. So in other words, we can say that so that is a team of the teams. Maybe the team of the teams can resolve the situation much better. So now I'd like to ask Mr. Vadim. Vadim is the head of the anti-crisis management system of the social insurance department of the Ministry of Social Affairs of the Republic of Estonia, and he was also one of the developers of this training course. And globally, I'd like to speak about the tendencies in crisis management, which he observes now in the EU countries and also in Estonia particularly. And maybe you can give us examples, the examples of the situative awareness on the possible crisis events. How can you evaluate the readiness of the societies, of the communities in the EU countries for the possible extraordinary or crisis situation? So recently we've seen blackout in Spain. And how did the society respond? And how efficient were the state was the state reaction? How the media and volunteers were engaged, business, how they were overcoming this problem altogether? And what does Estonia do to avoid and mitigate any kind of crisis situations which might occur, military issues or any other crises which might occur? Thank you.
First of all, I'm really happy that I have possibility to be here once again, and how the nations preparing. It's I think it's something that Matti already said, that it's a multi-level approach. So we start from the citizen, then it's community, and then it's municipality, and then it's state. And if it's even though Matti said that it's a more creative approach, but still during the preparation phase, it's really important to plan. As Matti said, that it's also we asking from citizens, are you ready? What's your plan? The personal plan needs to fit the plan from community, from municipality to state. If the plans doesn't match, then it's really hard to be ready. And then again, on top of that, you need to be ready to expect unexpected things. So this is all about. You need to be to think out of the box. And the question, are we ready? In my mind, we're never ready. It's always room for improvement. But the planning, the mindset of planning and negotiations with partners, with society, it's really, really important. And then was the questions, the blackout in Spain and Portugal. How did they make it? My personal opinion, they did really well. If it comes to consequences, if you think of consequences of blackout, what might appear? They have nuclear power plants and whatsoever. They managed to hold it safe. They managed to hold the society safe. So they really did well. There was the question what we do in Estonia also. It's an all-society approach in terms of preparedness. If you, from a citizen point of view, look at the state, or vice versa, state look at the citizen, and there is no shared responsibility. It's you just look who is obliged to do whatever. Then it doesn't work. It's our common effort to be stronger and better prepared. That's a key issue, I think.
Дякую.
Thank you, Vadim. We are never ready for a crisis, but nevertheless, we have to be planning. Could you tell us, please, from your point of view, how often do you, in your work, deal with crisis dilemmas when there is no good solution? When you have to be choosing between bad and very bad? And how typical it is for crisis management?
Everyday business. In crisis management, there is no good decision. If it's already crisis, then it's no brilliant decision you can make. You only choose between bad and very bad, and that's the trigger. That's the point to find out the less bad decision. And the thing is, decision not to decide, it's also decision, but then you do not control the consequences of that decision. So crisis management, you need to decide. That's the key, in my mind.
Дякую. Вадиме, скажіть, будь
Thank you. Vadim, could you tell us, please? Now, lots of countries try to develop the early assessment of the crisis and diagnostics of crises and threats. So, in your opinion, in Estonia, what kind of signs, what kind of signals the society and the government can understand that something bad is going to happen? Do you have the working system of monitoring, or maybe you have cross-sectoral councils which identify these kind of situations, or maybe there is something else in place?
Thank you very much. That's a tricky questions. Yes, of course. That's a lot of layers how you can foreseen that something might happen, and that strongly depends from if we talking about natural disaster, man-made disaster, or war. But nevertheless, I think it will be if it's not sudden outside disaster, the common approach will be that society or citizens will reflect. The best reflection will be from the amount of calls to, in our case, 112, the alarm center. If it's increased, if there's something, the feeling in the state, in the citizenship is it's going up, then it's something wrong, and then it's reflect to all crises. And of course there is state-related early warning systems how to monitor different disasters. But yeah, from my point of view, a part of the early warning systems, we more and more need to reflect and focus also on the population's feelings against the disaster or crisis, which might occur or not. And for some cases, we have seen the crisis as itself didn't occur, but the public perception It's it's really really high, and we need to deal with that.
Just to add that this really several layers approach, but I'd like to add that example that war in Ukraine is an early warning for Estonians and Estonia state.
Дякую.
Thank you. Well, all in all, I'd like to ask Matti and you, Vadim, on your vision on the synergy of this real forecasting prediction on the verge of the artificial intelligence and what we call energy of the crisis or the conflict when, for example, our perception of the possible crisis can be affected by our understanding of the history of this crisis situation, and that is something we've seen in our experience already, our stereotypes and how they can have an influence on our perception of the possible scenario. So, on the other hand, artificial intelligence can process some data, some statistics, and give us its own conclusion on the scenarios or development of the situation, the positive development or the negative development. From your personal experience, how do you perceive this synergy between technologies and the cognitive signals?
About AI, I'm a bit old for that. I will give the floor over to Vadim.
I would say nowadays we need to pay attention to both of it. You cannot ignore one or another. Both of them really important. And in terms of AI, it's we cannot deny it. It's there. And then it's actually the reason why we are here is strategic communication. It's yes, it's history. Yes, it's perception. It's and it's sadly, as we can see also in Ukraine nowadays, the history has been manipulated by history, and this is what we cannot allow. And then you can. We need to use all tools, artificial intelligence, cognitive, and so on, to face it. We cannot, even we are old, we cannot ignore the fact that it's nowadays. It's there.
It's new reality.
It's new reality, and we use artificial intelligence in everyday business. Same we use it in a crisis. It's of course it's advantages and disadvantages of that, but that's a tricky question. We need to work on it.
Дякую, Вадиме.
Thank you, Vadim. And now I'm glad to pass the floor to Yevgenia Yanchik, the head of the NGO School of Media Patriots. Could you tell us, please, what are your expectations from the spring school? First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for organization of the school and for the School of Media Patriots. It was a great honor to become the part of the organizers team, because before that the members of our organization participated the previous schools, and now we are also the part of this team, and it's important for us to gather all together to understand what are our future steps, so that after the occupation of the temporary occupied territories, we knew how to communicate, what to do. We we engage different various organization institutions as the participants, and we hope that thanks to these different vast experience, we will be able to observe the situation from different angles, and together we will be able to develop something really interesting. And in this case, I guess I'm kind of representative of the youth, of young generation, and today we mentioned crisis, and it's hard to be talking about the previous work and how to work in crisis because the world is very dynamic. But nevertheless, we can develop at least some kind of basic framework. And to understand, at least to study, what do we have now? What kind of information do we have at the moment? And with this, we can move forward.
Різношерстні учасники, але знаєте, з точки зору термінології стійкості, можна сказати, міжсекторальні або міждисциплінарні навіть учасники. Я вам дякую. Скажіть, будь ласка, як ви взагалі бачите розвиток цього навчального компоненту вашої організації, особливо, можливо, в напрямку дослідження форсайтів, кризових ситуацій? Які плани?
Ну, для нас важливо, що
For us, it is important the element that we have used, and therefore it is also important to study this element as well, because people who are 18, 19, 20, up to 25 years old, 10 years after the occupation, they will be the driver of the changes in the country, and therefore this is an important element. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. I guess that we can finalize our meeting. First of all, I'm very glad that today we have a strong team with us, and I'm confident that the results of this call will be useful both for Ukraine and our Estonian colleagues, experts, everyone who will be interested in crisis management. We will be informing you on the development and the key results of our school. And beside that, we invite you to become our partners on organization of the educational trainings and programs. And finally, I'd like to give the floor to Dmytro, one of the co-founders, co-organizers of the school, for the final words. Thank you very much.
A very brief and short summary, well, especially for those who are watching us online, to understand why all these people are here, on this stage, and moreover, who will be the participants for the spring school and also speakers there. Well, I think one of the keywords is diversity. Interdisciplinary and cross-sectorality means actually diversity, and you can see here that each of the speakers on the panel represents something different, but altogether it makes sense if we speak about, solving some crisis problems. Mate and Vadim mentioned, I think, another important keyword is decision-making. Because making decisions during a crisis or not making them, they will have also consequences. And Yevhen also mentioned the importance of Crimea as actually very challenging. And I would like just to underline that it's very challenging situation where history, present, and the future comes together. And how to learn about the next steps, because deoccupation of the territory actually will involve another crisis. because it's not, kind of happy end that the territory is deoccupied and then everyone is happy. No, that will be another crisis we actually must to prepare for. And preparedness also means not just, papers and plans and, investments, very important, but also people who will be those Ukrainians and international partners who will advance deoccupation and especially cognitive deoccupation, but any process after the victory. So that's our event actually contributes to support Ukraine's efforts to become again stronger, more resilient, and of course a member of the European Union, because that's our common security in the future. And if you look at the list of organizations who are contributing to this spring school, you also can see a very diverse of partnerships. You have, of course, the embassy, and then you have, of course, the permanent representation of President in Republic of Crimea, and then you have also the civil organizations and media organizations, and I mean, diversity is actually which makes us more stronger and resilient. And the participants and the speakers for the 3 days ahead will actually speak on different topics, starting from, history, strategic communications, crisis management, foresight for the future, resilience, and of course decision making. Thank you.
Раз у нас пішла, як кажуть.
So speaking of, well, in fact, it is also worth mentioning, and I guess that are going to be the words of appreciation. The words of appreciation for Vadim, Mati, and Dmytro, because that is their systematic work, the systematic work on Ukrainian challenges, the challenges which we are observing now during the war, and that is systematic work on strong cooperation, because indeed that is something we were discussing today. We are discussing the new forms of cooperation, and these new forms of cooperation, as Dmytro said, that is a step-by-step absorption of these topics. So we worked with Mati on cooperation with Rico. That is an important topic on the recognition of 1944 deportation, and Estonia has supported us, and they brought it to the new level, and that is really very successful case. We also had the successful cooperation on with Dmytro on. In fact, we're working on the youth workshop. Why it is so interesting? Because first of all, when we are saying that we need to work with youth, it seems like everything is clear. But nevertheless, when we are saying that we need to work with youth who are from the temporary occupied territories, it seems like kind of clear. But anyone who we're talking to, they're saying, why we didn't think of it before. So we are talking about forming of the new important topics, which at some point were somewhere around, but they were kind of blind spots, and therefore finding these kind of blind spots, something that we do not see typically, that is something that is doing us sustainable, resilient, but we can find them in these intersectional, cross-sectional cooperation, when we have different experiences, different expertise, and we can see the situation from different angles, and we can plan what will be our next step together. And it is also important to mention that when we're talking about the temporary occupied Autonomous Republic of Crimea and Russian propaganda, in fact, Russian propaganda is very conjecture when it comes to the management. It is works with a big vertical when big machine is launched, but it is very weak in crisis situation. And when we are working with temporary occupied territories, especially when we are able to talk to those who are from the Autonomous Republic of Crimea, when we know how to be the first one to communicate during crisis and to do that really good. That is the fight for your audience, in fact. And those crises which we as Ukraine, when it comes to temporary occupied territory, the things we did really good, it made them it helped us to do the next step and dive deeper in this topic. And first of all, I would like to thank for the systematic cooperation. And second of all, what are my personal expectations from this school? Well, I want to see all these lists of all those challenges we've never thought of, we didn't pay attention to, and to bring it back these kind of differentiative, cross-sectoral, cross-experiential expert circles to be able to plan the future, how to overcome the future crisis. And it's very symbolic that we are talking about the crisis, about overcoming crisis in Ukraine Crisis Media Center. Yes, indeed. And from our team, we'd like to thank Ukraine Crisis Media Center for organization of this event. Thank you, dear participants, and see you the next